Welcome everyone to our final event of this year's recruiting cycle. Some of you who may be joining may be applying this year, so you know our application deadline of May 1st is right around the corner. But today we're excited to conclude this season's events to talk about something with you today that is actually a new event we're doing around UCLA Anderson culture. We have a culture here of collaboration, innovation, and inclusion. And we felt that it was so important to do an event on this topic because as prospects and admits, when you're picking a school and a program, culture and what it feels like to be a student is probably something that's really top of mind for you. So today we hope this event will address for you, what does it really feel like to be a member of the UCLA Anderson community? Is UCLA Anderson a school where my unique life experience and perspective will be heard and valued? How will UCLA Anderson prepare me to lead and work in diverse teams? So I hope that's what you get a sense of today. I'm going to kick off with an overview of Anderson's culture and specifically sharing with you some initiatives that are top of mind and top priority for the school as it pertains to creating an environment that's equitable, diverse, and inclusive. And then you'll also hear firsthand from our students and alumni and have the opportunity to ask them questions as well. So I have to first just introduce you, for some of you that might not know us, to our 5-person strong EMBA admissions team. We are here to support you, answer your questions every step of the way. You know, on our website or in the follow-up email today, we will give you links to sign up for our weekly Q&A sessions, a one-on-one, or you can email us anytime with questions. We really love getting to know our prospective students, so please take advantage of that. So our culture is grounded in these 3 pillars: sharing success, thinking fearlessly, and driving change. Over the years, talking to students and alumni, I believe where Anderson really differentiates from other business schools is absolutely on this shared success pillar. In fact, one of our panelists today, Lynn Bresnahan, she was this summer on the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Fellowship Program for the school. And she conducted a lot of interviews across student and alumni of the different degree programs here at Anderson. And the sentiment that she continued to hear was that this environment of Anderson really stood out from other business schools as being extremely warm, inviting. It's a culture that breeds collaboration and not competition. So while our program is absolutely academically rigorous and our students are extremely accomplished and impressive, one thing you'll notice in our application and interview process is that we're really looking to understand from you, where are your areas for growth? There's always opportunities to learn, and we do look to admit students who are humble and bring that growth mindset. So something also that I think really differentiates our culture here at Anderson compared to other top programs across the country is that we have a wide variety of industries and functions represented in the class. There's so much value, especially in an EMBA program, when you have people who have average 15 years work experience and management experience as well. You learn just as much from your classmates as you do from your professors. And a lot of the reason that we have this diversity in industries and functions is because of our geographical location. You know, the Bay Area tends to be very tech heavy in those programs, or the Northeast very finance heavy. LA doesn't necessarily just have 1 or 2 dominant industries. And this is actually a reason that we actually attract people from outside of LA. Only about half our students live in LA. So we even have that geographical diversity, with about 15% of our students coming from outside of California. And even usually 3 to 5 students who travel in internationally, now that we have the monthly program, from anywhere from Peru, Brazil. We have Jorge on, who traveled from Mexico City as one of our panelists. China, India, Canada. This really makes up those diverse perspectives that help you learn about not only business here in the US, but globally as well. Also, when we recruit, we really focus on capping certain industries and functions. We don't want any industry or function represented at more than 15%. Because again, we believe that getting an MBA is about learning how to think differently and understanding how people cross-functionally approach problem solving. And when we meet people who come from non-traditional MBA, non-traditional business school backgrounds, if that's you, we really embrace and encourage you to attend the program. We have people in our program, just to name a few, we've had school principals, head of the Secret Service, neurosurgeons, a Navy SEAL, director of almond farming, a Hollywood TV writer, a low-income housing director from Brazil, and small business owners across many different industries. And, when you come into this program, it's not just about getting to learn from these individuals, but you develop deep, meaningful relationships with them. I also wanted to share with you today our cultural diversity numbers. I think that employees, now more than ever, employees and students, they want transparency from organizations on diversity figures. And that is a big reason why I share these with you today. Well, I believe that we have made big strides. I know from the 4 years I've been with the program, we've really increased our female representation numbers. We continue to represent a diverse global audience. We also have a lot of work to do, and there is a big focus and a lot of initiatives the school is doing around what we call, and your companies call as well, pipeline development, and really making sure that we're reaching out to people and expressing to them the importance of graduate management education and what it can do for them. So there's definitely a focus for us to increase representation, not only from gender, but from different race and ethnic backgrounds around the LGBTQ plus community, African Americans, Hispanic, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders specifically. We actually recently launched a school-wide initiative called the Pathway Guidance Program. It's a special alumni referral program to bring in people who maybe have not been exposed to, again, the advantages of graduate management education, and it has a counseling and mentorship element as well. So while I've just highlighted you for all the ways that UCLA Anderson community is made up of individuals from diverse backgrounds with unique experiences, both personally and professionally, I really think it's important to point out that when working in diverse teams is actually more challenging sometimes than working with people who share your values and beliefs and experiences. So the inclusion piece and equity, diversity, inclusion is something that Anderson is very focused on offering training and opportunities to practice these skills, especially in a safe environment like an educational learning environment. And part of that is being uncomfortable at times. So as part of our leadership training, I'll highlight two things that we've done. You can see pictured here our Dean of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, Heather Caruso, who joined the program a few years ago. She teaches an approach that she developed called ECHO. It's an acronym for being engaged, courageous, humble, and open, to ensure that we hear each other in the way that people want to be heard. Also, we teach something called intergroup dialogue. This is actually a method that comes out of University of Michigan, and it's really an experiential learning dialogue program that effectively helps you talk about items that are hard to talk about: social identities, prejudice, privilege, and that is something that we give our students opportunities to practice as well. I also wanted to point out that our senior dean of our programs, Miguel Unzueta, also his primary research is in equity, diversity, inclusion, and he's a guest speaker in many of our classes as well. So curriculum initiatives. I wanted to point out for you some things that we're specifically doing to advance the culture and talk around equity, diversity, inclusion in our curriculum. You'll see here listed some of the electives that we've developed around this topic that you can take. I will be transparent that a lot of times these electives may not be offered on the EMBA weekend schedule, but many of our EMBAs can take these on the weeknight schedules with our fully employed MBA students. So you definitely would want to check these out if this is an interest area for you. We also have launched a speaker referral program. This is where we're asking our students, alumni, staff, and faculty to actually suggest people that maybe are not people that would be in our professors' networks, or when they're thinking about guest speakers, or maybe our executive directors when they're thinking about our conferences. They may not have people in their network who come from different backgrounds. So it's a speaker referral database that they can pull from to be able to make sure that we are getting that diversity, again, in our guest speakers, in our panelists, and our keynotes. Also, we are currently underway on a big review and analysis of our case studies, making sure that we have underrepresented group members in protagonist roles that are featured, and even cases that deal on the topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So students' opinions and feedback are a huge part of developing our culture. I mean, the students, we have to hear from the students to understand what they need. So Dean Caruso actually leads an Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Student Advisory Council that meets on a monthly basis. The council is actually made up of student leaders from all of these identity clubs that are listed here. And we also have EMBA specific representatives that serve as a member of this council, and they also serve on the EMBA Leadership Council that is made up of representatives on the EMBA Council who can bubble up any concerns or innovation that the students are looking for and provide support. So while these identity clubs are available to EMBAs, I will say it's something that you're going to have to decide to get involved in. There's so much available to you. So it's a matter of you deciding where you want to, put your time. But absolutely, you'll hear actually Torrie Harris, one of our panelists today, talk about how she really got involved in the Black Business Student Association and what that experience was like and the value she got from that. I also starred these two new clubs that just got started this last fall, the Muslim Business Student Association and the First Generation Student Association. These were created and developed by students with the support of staff and faculty. Finally, I'm just going to wrap up by talking about some of our extracurricular programming in addition to the core curriculum and electives that we offered. So there is something going on every single week, maybe every single day. And again, as EMBAs, you'd have to decide what you get involved with. But I do find that, we have conferences. Some of these are some of our conferences or speaker series that are specifically focused on discussions related to identities. Of course, we encourage, people of that identity to attend, but it's also an opportunity for everyone to attend, to listen, learn, and engage. In fact, the What's Going On series was developed by Torrie Harris, again, who is one of our panelists today, and she'll talk about how she went about creating that in partnership with some other students and staff. Finally, I also wanted to bring up that beyond our identity-specific events, I'm really proud of our 8 academic centers that focus on different areas of business, anywhere from entertainment, real estate, global management, entrepreneurship. They've all been very conscious to really choose topics and bring in speakers that educate on how to drive meaningful change. Again, this is one of our key pillars. And so these are example of kind of, again, like our real estate center bringing in a whole speaker series and related to affordable housing, or Jay Tucker, who is executive director of our entertainment and media and sports management, did a really interesting session recently on Afrofuturism and what that is and educating on that form of entertainment. So this is just, again, a few examples that I wanted to bring and how it's woven into our culture. So I hope that provided you a kind of nice overview of where we're at. We definitely are here to dive in and answer more questions if you want to talk specifically about that. But I'm going to welcome our panelists in today. And what I'm really excited about the panel today is that we do have 2 current students, Torrie Harris and Lynn Bresnahan, but I also wanted to make sure and bring students like Jorge from the class of 2020 and Mark Weinstock for 2019, so you can understand where the threads of our culture are similar across cohorts and how it can differ as well. So thank you, panelists, for joining. It's so wonderful to see you. And as I said, I will leave time at the end for prospective students that are joining the call to ask some questions as well. So I'm going to ask each of you panelists, I think first it's important to understand a bit about your story. So if you can each just provide a brief overview of kind of your background, why did you decide to pursue an MBA, and why did you pick Anderson? I think that would be a great place to start. So Torrie, if you can go ahead and start there.
Sure. Thanks, Shannon, and welcome everyone. It's great to Zoom you. I can't say it's great to meet you, but it's great to Zoom you. I think I'm creating a new phrase here. I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm an attorney by trade, And I always had dreams of being in California. And so when the opportunity presented itself prior to Anderson, I moved. But even before that, after law school, I always had it in my heart that I would pursue my MBA. I didn't know when the time was going to be or what it was going to look like, didn't have an idea of the schools. But I reached a point in my life and in my career where I needed to reset and kind of reevaluate what was going on and how I can push forward. And so I took a moment to just do a lot of praying, a lot of meditating, and thinking about how I wanted to get my life and my career back on track, so to speak. And so I started doing an NBA tour, and some of you may be doing the same thing. And to be honest, and I don't think I've ever shared this with Shannon, UCLA was not on my list at first. And until I met Shannon, and she impressed me so much with the offerings of what the program had to offer for me. And so I started to look more into it. I also had an interest in sports and entertainment. And a friend of mine said, hey, if you want to go into this field and get the networks, UCLA Anderson is the place to do that. And I'm so glad that I listened to that advice. I started to meet more people on the admissions team, Serica and Christina and Ellen, and they were all wonderful. They were all diverse, and they were all genuine. And it wasn't just admissions for the admission's sake. It was a genuine need to see if this was a good fit. And that's what really drew me to the program. Another thing that drew me was the focus on leadership and emphasis on women in leadership in particular. And so this gave me the opportunity to explore the things that I wanted to explore and a chance to reset. And it's been one of the best decisions I've made in the recent years.
Thanks so much, Torrie, for sharing that. Jorge, why don't you come up next?
Hola, buenos dias. Greetings from Mexico. First, I wish you all good health, and it's an honor to be here today. So thanks for the invitation, Shannon. So I am Jorge Gonzalez. I work for an American global company that is called Emerson Automation Solutions. I'm a director of a business unit in Mexico and across Latin America. I'm also a proud brewing alumni EMBA class of 2020, and I was on the monthly section. So I'm based out of Mexico City, and I used to travel to Los Angeles every month for the in-person classes at UCLA Anderson. And during the rest of the month, it was virtual remote learning, and that was before the pandemic. So what drew me to UCLA Anderson is I've been always in Mexico, and the culture in the northern part from Mexico and the United States. I'm actually from the north of Mexico. UCLA has always been my dream school. Always, the Bruins, the basketball, the football, the soccer, and everything related to the Bruins. So I made my dream going to take my MBA at UCLA. And I need it because in my company, I've been there for more than 15 years. So I need that to keep climbing the corporate ladder. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Jorge. Lynn?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lynn Bresnahan. As Shannon said, I started my life out as a chemical engineer. Right out of school, joined Kimberly-Clark and was with them for 13 years in various roles doing product development, process engineering, did process engineering in our facilities where we made toilet paper, paper towels. And then most recently was at our facility down in Orange County where I led 3 of our departments as a production leader. And had always had an MBA on my mind. I knew that I didn't want to do engineering and manufacturing forever, and so really saw it as a way to be able to diversify my skill set, accelerate that learning, so that I could prepare myself for bigger scope leadership roles. I could have done the hard way and gone and done a little bit of time in marketing, maybe done some time in sales, like really get the experience outside of my core competencies, but saw the MBA as a way to really accelerate that versus potentially taking longer and doing the hard way. And why UCLA? I so had this on my mind, knew this is something that I wanted to do. Loved Southern California when I finally came here in 2016, knew that I wanted to stay here. And then Kimberly-Clark announced that they were shutting our facility in early 2018. And that really felt like a sign to me from the universe or whatever you want to call it, that now was the time to do it, that this is really a golden opportunity for me to accelerate my career. So decided to stay here, which worked out very well. So I met my husband then about 6 months later. And then started the circuit, kind of like Torrie talked about, where I was looking at, to me, the three major schools in the Southern California area. I was looking at UC Irvine, because I was living there at the time, USC, and then UCLA. Kind of narrowed myself down to USC and UCLA. I wanted that opportunity to have like a bigger network, meet a lot more people. And then I went to my class visits. And I went to USC, and then I got to go to UCLA. And yes, this was when we were in person and get a little bit more of the feeling. And what was really striking to me was the USC class did not feel engaged. A lot of people were on their computers. It didn't really feel like here they were in front of this great professor who I was loving. I was loving what he was teaching, and everybody just didn't seem to be paying attention to him, nor did they seem to be paying attention to each other, like really engaging in that learning process. And that really turned me off. And then a couple of weeks later, I got to go to a UCLA classroom, and everyone was engaged. They were talking to each other. They were engaging with the professor. Like there was this really dynamic learning environment that I just fell in love with. And Shannon talked about that culture. You could feel that culture in that room. You could feel for people, and I don't know exactly how to describe it, but like that there was shared success, that people were interested in hearing what their classmates had to say. They were interested in what the professor had to say. And there was just like this group dynamic learning going on, and I was sold. And then came to UCLA. So I hope that come here soon, you guys will get the opportunity to be able to have that class visit when everything's safe, because I think that's where you really feel the power of the UCLA culture.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn, for mentioning that. And before I go to Mark, I will just mention that we'll be sending it in the follow-up, but we do have a virtual class visit experience we've tried to create that, does not replicate, to I think Lynn's point, but also we are doing our current students are actually doing drop-in sessions every other week as well, where you can just talk to them and open and ask them, which is a lot of what happens in a class visit. But again, we do hope to be bringing you to class real soon in person. Mark, if you could share your experience.
Sure, thanks, Shannon. So I'm an attorney, like Torrie, and been practicing law for almost 30 years. And I've been kind of in a general counsel role for the past 15 years of my career, and before that, big law firms in Los Angeles. And I remember maybe now it's 12, 13 years ago, two of my colleagues at the company that I was formerly at went through Anderson's EMBA program. And for the 2 years, I saw a significant change in their approach to business situations. We were all on an executive committee together, and I could just see the way they were asking questions, the way they were analyzing things was different. And to me, the timing wasn't right at that point in my life to go back and pursue an MBA, but I was so impressed by these two women and what they really learned through UCLA Anderson that I decided at some point I would like to take that plunge and get my MBA. I've always been entrepreneurial, and so I had kind of that entrepreneurial bug. I've started companies and have owned companies outside of my law practice, so the time of this was in 2017. I decided to start exploring, similar to what you've heard from the other panelists. I also went and visited two other schools that were offering programs in Southern California. And it part of it was the in-class visit and the engagement, but I chose UCLA for a different reason. I chose it because I thought it was the hardest program. And what I mean by that is the academic rigor with which I would be experiencing was much higher, I felt, than the other programs. So at first it could be daunting, but I felt from my perspective, this is something that I'm voluntarily doing. At my stage in my career, I didn't need an MBA to support my law practice. This is something totally different. So I wanted to get the most out of my education, both from an academic perspective, from a networking perspective, from getting to know different people and different ways that people think perspective. So I really decided that UCLA had the most rigorous academic program, and that's why I chose UCLA, ironically enough. The other thing I can say is that a good friend of mine who does have an MBA that's I've been a CEO of several companies. In talking to him about why to get an MBA, he said something that was very impactful that I wanted to share with you. And he said that when he's in his executive committee meetings as CEO, he doesn't necessarily have all the answers to all the questions. He's got vice presidents that are chiming in and they're closer to the details. But what he does know is what questions to ask. And that really impacted me. And that's been consistent with my experience at UCLA. I may not know all the answers, but I now am in the conversation. I'm in a different level of conversation because of what I learned at UCLA. I can have discussions on marketing. I'm not a marketing person, but I understand that language at a different level. So to me, that's been one of the tremendous rewards of my educational experience at Anderson.
Thanks, Mark, so much for sharing that. So I'm going to actually stop sharing so that we can see everybody's face a little bit bigger here. So wanted to go in, actually, Mark, I'm going to ask you the first kind of question. So you graduated in 2019, which was actually a really transformational time in the EMBA program because we doubled our class size from 75 students that were typically just in one biweekly section to about 150 students across 2 schedule options. And typically when organizations or programs scale, it can be really hard to maintain a sense of community or establish a culture. Curious, how did you feel like you and your classmates navigated getting to know each other? And just how would you overall describe the Anderson culture if someone asked you?
Thanks, Shannon. So yes, it was the first time we had a monthly and biweekly section, but going into it, I didn't know any different. So from my perspective, I was in a biweekly section. So that means I was on campus every other weekend with my cohort. And then once a month, we got to see the monthly cohort. So at first it was a little challenging to get to know the people in the monthly program because we just weren't with them as much. And they had online, their academic learning was supplemented with more online learning. So they had their own study groups and their own kind of class programs, which was a little different from ours. Same subjects, but just different teachers and things like that. So at first it was a little challenging because you're trying to get to know people in your own section. But then what I realized is I have, an opportunity to expand my my relationships with 140 other people. And again, from my perspective, I'll give you an example. Like in my world, I didn't really have a chance to talk to people, let's say, that were in the engineering profession. It just didn't really cross. I'm a real estate attorney, so that just wasn't. I didn't have a lot of exposure. But getting to know so many of the people in my class and in the monthly section that were engineers just brought a whole different perspective to how I look at things and view things, because their perspective is completely different than my perspective. So it became a much more robust and well-rounded experience. For me, I think it's an old saying, and I don't mean this to sound trite, but you get out what you put in. So I leaned into it. I just decided that I wanted to make the effort when we were all on in class weekends when the monthlies were there, to get to know people and on a deeper level, not just, hi, what's your name and what do you do and where do you live type of thing, but like really understand the people and their experiences and their journeys. And by leaning in, I developed some incredible relationships with the people in the monthly section, so much so that I've now launched 2 businesses with people from the monthly section, one during my time in Anderson and one since my time in Anderson. Some of my closest friends and business partners were in the monthly section that I was not in. So I think that if you reach out and you look for that experience and look for the opportunity to get to know people, regardless of section, the rewards come back. I can't tell you how beneficial it's been to me to get to know these other people. So, and to your point, Shannon, the culture I have found has always been very inclusive. It wasn't like, hey, you're in a different section, I don't need to get to know you, I want to just get to know the people in my section. I mean, I didn't really experience that at all. People just wanted to figure out how we were alike, how we were different, and what we brought to the table in terms of how we think about things and solutions and perspectives and journeys. And it was, it was very rewarding for me.
Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing that. So that was class of 2019 kind of commentary. Now I'll go to Jorge. Jorge, you mentioned that you traveled from Mexico City for the program. You've lived in Mexico your entire life. And from a professional standpoint, you've even been kind of the same company culture for over a decade. So curious for you how you would describe your experience at Anderson when it came to, working in teams and getting to know your classmates, and maybe how did the experience differ from what you've experienced in cultures in working and living in Mexico?
Thanks, Shannon. So I've been working in this company for more than 15 years. So coming into UCLA Anderson, what I found is the values that you mentioned before in your presentation: share success, think fearlessly, and drive change. They are reflected daily by the staff, the faculty, and all of the students. All of them were always open to learn from each other. In the 2020 class, there were 29 countries of birth represented, 29 countries, and all of them from different backgrounds, as Mark was mentioning: engineering, healthcare, marketing, business, finance, whatever the background, all of them. Military, there was 20% of the class coming from the military. So that, and all of them were eager to learn from each other, learn from the diversity, from their different backgrounds, their cultures, and all of them were always eager to know you as a person. I was surprised to come into the class every month, and people were asking for me as a person. They wanted to know about my family. They wanted to know also what I do for a living, but it was mostly for the person. I remember that we were bonding, as Mark mentioned, with the monthlies and the bi-weekly sections. We actually created a football soccer club local in the two sections. So every Saturday after classes, we all got together to play football soccer at the Drake Stadium in UCLA. And 29 countries, everyone in the soccer game, we were using our jerseys of our country of origin. The Mexico jersey. There was an international student coming from Russia, and we are super best friends right now. But he was wearing his Russia jersey. The people from Israel, France, everyone. It was like playing in the World Cup. Let me say it like that. It was like the World Cup. Everyone was there. So what I want to say is that the real value is the networking that you are exposed to, the persons that you're going to meet. You may be taking a class, and a part of the rigorous academic and all of the learning that is great, and I think UCLA Anderson is number one on that. The networking and the people that you're going to develop relationships with, the brotherhoods, and as Mark mentioned, the potential business future partners that you're going to have. That is the real value, and that was I was surprised to when I go to UCLA Anderson.
Thank you. I remember seeing pictures of that, Jorge, of you guys all playing the soccer. That's very cool.
It was so cool, and also we played with women, with everybody. Everyone was playing there. It was great.
Great, thank you. Well, so shifting gears, I think over to Torrie and Lynn. I think for your class, the class of 2021 will always go kind of down in history as a very special class and a very challenging time to be a student. You probably can't imagine facing kind of more difficult challenges than going to school during a global pandemic, a polarizing presidential election. And, on a more serious note, a lot of very tragic situations that's brought racial inequities and racism into the forefront of the conversation, something that I think many people believe is long overdue. So I want to just first ask you if you can comment on what it was like to pursue your MBA as part of the UCLA Anderson community, during this time. Torrie, if you could start, that would be great.
Sure. I think for me personally, and I believe this may be true of everyone, continuing on with our studies during this time was exactly what Anderson was preparing us for. It was preparing us for dealing with change, dealing with challenges, learning how to pivot and adapt and to lead in challenging times. And so as rough as it was, just dealing with whether it was the election and the racial and the civil unrest, it was an opportunity for our class to demonstrate their leadership strengths in their own way. For me, that came about through serving as chair of the What's Going On series. And that series was birthed out of the deaths of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And I'm sorry, I get choked up every time I talk about it, and Breonna Taylor. And it was a point where I personally, I was grieving the loss of my grandfather, and I couldn't process the first death, and I couldn't process the second death. And then George Floyd was murdered, and something in me said, you have to get up. You have to do something. And I just tapped back into what my purpose has always been as a lawyer, to give a voice to the voiceless, and reached back out to Dean Caruso and said, we want to continue a conversation. People don't know how to process what's going on. People can't understand what's going on. And to be fair, at the time, we were calling it continued conversations. And other people were approaching Dean Caruso as well. And we came together and said, let's build this platform. Initially, I had in mind just a one session, but the vision evolved into something that could be sustainable and really reflect the voice of Anderson. And so What's Going On became this safe space where Anderson students, faculty, alum, and staff could come together and talk about the issues that really impact the educational experience. And for the inaugural year, we spoke about the Black experience. And so going forward, there will be a new theme, a new purpose, and of course, a new chair since I'm leaving. But it, for me, this year brought about the opportunity to not only bring out my leadership skills, but to see the leadership of my class and the staff, actually. And so it's, out of pain comes purpose. And so this is what Anderson is all about.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Torrie. And I love to hear that the What's Going On series is going to continue. And it's absolutely a mark that you and your classmates have left. And I think that's really like what I was talking about around student innovation. And what Mark said too, I think what I've witnessed here is if you lean in and you want to make something happen, you're going to have the support in doing that. It's just a matter of where do you feel your purpose is. And this is a community that's going to embrace that. So thank you, Torrie, for your contribution and sharing that. Lynn, I'd love for you to kind of address the same kind of question about, again, what your experience was like going to school during this time.
Thanks. I think Torrie said it really well. But what I would add to that is also practicing empathy real time. I mean, we don't all know what's going on behind this screen of mine right now. And I think just really everyone, I think had to learn and recognize that we don't know where people are coming from. We don't know what is happening off screen. If there are children running around screaming naked, trying to get food, or, you don't know what just happened at work, or, even with extended family, and just bringing that empathy to class and to work and the experiences we have that we would see in the classroom and in the coursework, and just recognizing that we all just need a little bit of empathy right now. And how do you practice that? And then how do you take that back with your family? And how do you take that back with your coworkers and your team? I think like Torrie said, right, this is what Anderson was preparing us for. And maybe to take a little bit of silver lining in this very dark cloud is practicing that skill real time, and with a group of trusted friends, with a group of trusted people who will call you out when you're messing up and then give you some pointers on how to improve and get better. And then you can go back to practicing. So I'm really grateful for the group of people in our class and for going through them with this. Sure, it is not the experience we wanted in terms of school, but we made it through almost, so close. And I think we're better off for it. And I think it has bonded us in a way that a normal, typical Anderson experience couldn't have. Because I know that even if I didn't get a chance to really get to know someone, they call me in 10 years, I will answer that call.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And Lynn, if you could just also share a little bit about last summer you applied to be one of 4 equity, diversity, and inclusion fellows that was working with Dean Caruso, who's our Dean of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And if there's anything you want to comment on from that experience, or maybe, for those that are listening, they're the future. They're going to be the future of the Anderson community. And so what do you see from what you were able to work with faculty and staff and leadership at the school? What was that experience like?
Sure. The task force was actually my 3rd try at working on equity, diversity, inclusion at Anderson. And it really started with equity, diversity, inclusion as fundamental to my core belief system. So it was something that I wanted to get involved with at the school and give back to, because I think when we do that work at a school like Anderson, a business school that is, training business leaders to go out to the world, the multiplicative effect is so huge, right? Think about all the people that we will lead through our careers, all the people that we will touch. And if we learn these very fundamental skills here at Anderson, then we can have that multiplying effect throughout our careers. But it actually started for me back when I first heard Professor Caruso speak on our very first day of EMBA back in Leadership Foundations. So of course, I'm a huge nerd. I'm so excited to be back in the classroom. I was so excited to be sitting there. I had my pens and my pencils and my binder, and I was so excited. And then Professor Caruso comes in and just gives this amazing discussion of who we are and why are we here, and really getting to fundamentally of why are you here and nowhere else? What are you going to put your energies toward? And it spoke so much to me, spoke so much to my passions, and spoke so much to why I was at Anderson that I just fell in love with her. And I was like, whatever that woman is working on, I want to do. And then, she is the Dean of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So that I was like, okay, yes, this is great. I want to work with this woman. So she put a call out very early in September about a student council that they were trying to pull together for this. I applied for that, wasn't chosen. I was like, okay, that's fine. That's not the right time. Then they morphed that into class representatives. So we voted for that. Wasn't chosen again. That's okay. Not the right time. And then the task force comes up. And I had also just been severed from Kimberly Clark, as I shared before. I knew that was coming. I knew that my time with them was ending and that I was going to stay in LA and do job searching. So I was like, okay, maybe this is it. So I applied and was chosen, and that was great. And that task force really was so amazing because I was working with 3 other students who were at FEMBA, so I wouldn't have had a chance to come across them otherwise. Got to learn and know them, got to learn from them. And we were able to work on some pretty meaty initiatives for the school. We worked on trying to understand the student experience. I am still working on this massive database of activities that the school works on and trying to make our approach more data-driven around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it just felt like a really great way, I think Torrie talked a little bit about this, to give back to the school, to help others learn, to make a meaningful impact while I was here at Anderson, and hopefully that will live on afterwards. So I think that's just for me, just maybe to our prospective students here is there's so much ability to get involved and reach out and be a part of the community beyond just your EMBA education, beyond just your classes. That if there is a passion or something that is part of your fundamental belief system that you want to make an impact through, that Anderson provides you that opportunity. Sometimes you have to be a little tenacious about it. That's okay, because that's life. You just have to stick.
Thank you, Lynn. I love that persistence. Never give up. I love it. So now we're going to open to Q&A. So I really welcome all of you. Thank you. So there's already a few hand raises, but please feel free to raise your hand or put the question in the chat. Asia, I'll go ahead if you want to unmute and share your question.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for taking the time to meet with us. I really appreciate it. I have a quick question, or well, it may not be quick. What is the one thing that you learned about yourself, or the most important thing that you've learned about yourself while you've gone through the program, and how has that benefited you in both your personal and professional life?
Ooh, love that, Asia. Okay. Well, I'm going to actually let each one of you answer that. I know we don't have 15 minutes left, but I think it was actually going to be one of my last questions. So Asia, you kind of read in my mind here. So Torrie, why don't, if you want to start us out and
Ooh, let's see. That's a good question, Asia. I would say the one thing that I've learned is that it's okay to be me. We talk about the culture of Anderson and the equity and the inclusion and the diversity, and everyone is different. And so if I want people to accept me, I have to accept other people. And so I had to learn that I am okay as me. And it's okay to carry out and walk this experience within my own natural gifts and talents, and to cherish the gifts and talents of others. And so as I rise, I want to lift other people as well. So it's okay to be me, and I'm okay. That's what I've learned.
Thank you, Torrie. Mark?
Yeah, thanks for the question. There's a lot of different ways I could go on this, but part of this comes back to my approach as being a parent. I have 3 children, and in my career, I've always been the problem solver. People come to me for answers, for advice. I need to figure it out. I need to be right as an attorney, and Torrie I think can agree with this. Like, we get paid to be right. And so there's a lot of pressure on that. And I think through my experience with Anderson, I realized that I didn't always have to be right. And I could, similar to kind of what Torrie was saying, I can forgive myself for that. And what I also learned was that I became a lot more balanced between being a knower and a learner, right? So I know a lot of things as a lawyer, but I'm learning a lot of things. And sometimes that balance was a little out of whack. And by diving into something, statistics, might as well just bang my head against the table, because that was not my thing. So I was very much a learner, and I relied on other people in my section and in my study group to really bring their thoughts into that conversation, where I could just say, okay, like, I'm not the problem solver here, I'm the learner here. So I think that really helps solidify that balance in my mind.
Yeah, what an incredible thing to learn. I think at far into your career, very, very cool. Yeah. That's the growth I'm talking about. Mark was one of probably our most seasoned, experienced students coming into the program, and I love hearing that, Mark.
That's a very delicate way of saying I was one of the oldest, but thank you for that, Shannon. I appreciate
that. You said it, not me. I know. Okay, Jorge, what about for you?
Yes. So thanks for the question. So what I realized during the program is that, as with so many backgrounds, so many people that know a lot of things from, as Mark said, I'm an attorney, I know about laws. The engineering, people know about engineering. There's going to be always a time that you know something that another person doesn't know. But when you think that you know everything on your field, and then you come to the program, and you realize that, oh, I didn't know this. Oh, I'm learning about my own field of expertise. Maybe it's a presentation skills. Maybe it's something that you felt comfortable with. During the program, I was aware that I felt good, and I was feeling confident in some areas of my leadership style, that, during the program, I can get better, I can improve. So self-awareness is what I learned in the program. And also mindfulness. Mindfulness is working in these mini groups. Like, okay, let's meet at 7 p.m. for the assignment of the week. Oh, why does these people doesn't call in? Oh, what is going on? Okay, you have to be mindfulness about the other person, if they can comply with the commitments or not. Maybe there's a good reason why the other person cannot comply with the commitment. So self-awareness, mindfulness is what I learned about myself, and I try to improve during the program.
Thank you, Jorge. Lynn?
How to ask for help? I grew up in manufacturing, right? Like, you don't ask for help, you don't admit weakness. I mean, honestly, most of our leaders are former military, so we absorb a lot of that culture, not to overly generalize. But so in this program, with like having worked most of the time, trying to keep up volunteer work, getting married in the middle of it, like having family, like all of us have those commitments that they're pulling out our time, and being able to ask for help from my group mates, from my classmates, from my family, from my spouse, at the times that I needed it, versus just like, gonna soldier through, gonna muscle through this one again, has been some really big learning for me. Not that I'm perfect at it, but it really helped me open my eyes to like, yes, I can do this and I can ask for help and it's not a bad thing.
Thanks, Lynn. Asia, thank you so much for the question. Alexandra?
My question is a little bit more about the networking and about creating community. So how do you guys engage with each other? First of all, in this really hard times when we're all virtual, but when you're on campus, like what happens? You get there and what?
We eat a lot.
we do give good food.
Yeah.
Torrie, maybe do you want to comment maybe on the time during, what that was like during the kind of in the virtual? Because I think there's elements of the virtual that will continue.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mark or Jorge, if one of you want to take what it was like more from the non-virtual. But Torrie, go ahead.
Yeah, in the virtual, the opportunity to network is still there. You have to be a little more intentional in how you go about doing it. You have to be intentional in that you don't want to lose a connection, and you have to be intentional in how you shift your mindset to build a connection and really hone a different skill set. So for me, it was about doing one-on-ones with people that I may not have spoken with. Like Mark said, he was in the biweekly. He networked with the monthlies. Same with me and Lynn. We were biweekly, and so we don't get the opportunity to see or talk to the monthlies as often as we see each other. And so I had to really put myself out there and get my confidence up and get my strength and be intentional about how I maintained relationships in the virtual world.
Mark, what was that feeling, of networking? I know sometimes that word, what was that like?
Well, again, to Torrie's point about the intentionality. So it's not networking in a passing out business cards type of a way, right? There's a lot more depth to it. For me, I actually started networking, to use that term, before my first class even kicked off. I, got a class list of people, and I just kind of did it more geographically and started reaching out a couple months before to certain people and saying, hey, I see that we're going to be in the same class. You live, sort of close. Let's meet for coffee and just get to know each other. So that was an intentionality. And so I walked in day one, not really knowing anybody. I didn't have friends that were going through the program, but at least I had some familiarity with people. Alexandra, to answer your question, Alexandra, what it was like on campus, you get there on Friday, at least, people would get there maybe early, maybe you'd grab some lunch. We'd sit in certain common areas of the Anderson campus, and people would just, start talking, and then you just kind of join in on the conversation. So there was a lot of, just informal discussions, and it's kind of welcome. After class on Friday, we made a habit of going to the Luskin Hotel bar and just hanging out there and just, again, casually just joining in on conversations that were happening. And then the other part of it was, you get assigned study groups, and the faculty does a very good job, administration does a very good job, rather, of pairing people up that are from diverse backgrounds and industries. So it's not, all a bunch of, the same type of, people or, professions together. And then you really form bonds with those people because you're working with them in and out. So that was my experience. I did want to come back to one thing that Torrie mentioned about her What's Going On series. And I give you a lot of credit, Torrie, for kind of seeing the need for that and stepping into it. Anderson does, I think, a very, very good job of allowing students to, when they have ideas, to kind of get behind them and help cultivate those ideas. So one of the things that I did when I was on campus was created a program called the Visionary Leadership Forum, where, and Shannon talked about this a little bit in terms of speaker referrals. We just did it organically. where we reached out to people that we had contact with or that we knew that were CEOs of major companies. Overstock.com, Cedars-Sinai, the president of Cedars-Sinai, Sherry Lansing, the former president of Paramount, Fox Sports, the president of Fox Sports. And we just developed this leadership speaker series where we as the students asked the questions. We were the moderators, and the questions were designed to really track what we were learning at that point in our classes. So if we were in a marketing class, we talked about marketing and had Q&A, and the administration just supported this student-run program that allowed us to do that. And then continuing kind of further to, in terms of like post-graduation and talking about like the bonds and network that bonds and friendships we made, in mid 2020, we decided to host our just for our class kind of a Zoom session to really talk about, again, creating the safe space, the civil unrest, all the things that were going on between the pandemic and the various tragedies that have occurred, as Torrie was saying with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And our class, there's probably 70 people from our class a year after graduation that all jumped on to support each other and just hold that space of compassion and empathy to just be there for others that were experiencing this differently. That's post-graduation, just because we all became good friends. So I wanted to share that as well.
Thanks, Mark. And I want to see if you can unmute. And I do want to just say that if anyone has to quickly jump, you're going to get a follow-up email from us. We really appreciate you joining today. And there's plenty of other events that we've done on different topics, about, I think, 15 events over the last 9 months. So we'll send the link to that too. But Indu, can you, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, but what was your question?
Yeah, it is this session is so nice that I really like the word mindfulness and intentional. So just from that aspect of it, these 2 years, you can say it is a long time or it's a very quick time, and where you get this opportunity to interact with those great minds. And would like to know what kind of a preparation that we will have to do in order to get the maximum out of that. I know it is also to do with giving, and also which means participating in the club along with our, this is an executive MBA where we are going to also work in parallel. So what is the kind of preparation that you did? I really like Mark's approach of, reaching out to people ahead and making that, establishing that connection. But yeah, I would like to hear from the panel there.
Jorge, do you want to talk to any, Jorge and Lynn, I'll have you guys each take this one about what any preparation you recommend to people who might be starting this program in, the coming months or in a year. Go ahead, Lynn.
I think some very honest conversations with the people in your life that you spend a lot of time with now, be that family, partner, children, about what this could look like. It is a significant time commitment, and just making sure that you kind of like all have this same picture of what this is going to look like. For me, it was with my partner, and like, hey, I'm not going to have this much time to like run off to dinner with you or run to the movies, or, we're going to have to be more intentional about the time we spend together and when we spend that time together. And like my extended family, I'm the only one in Southern California. Everybody's off on the East Coast. So I'm only coming home at Christmas, right? I can't make a lot of time during the year like I normally would have. And like local friends kind of like, all right, I'll see you in 2 years. I mean, somewhat jokingly, but just having those conversations up front so people know what to expect of you, and that, making sure that the time you have together is meaningful versus, before, where potentially you could get together a lot more often. And then the same conversation with work, like your sphere at work, be that boss, your team, the colleagues around you, is, I think, those open, honest conversations in all aspects of your life, just so everyone knows that this is something that's important to you, why you're doing it, and then hopefully, they're sharing in that success with you so that they can understand where they may need to help you, where they may need to step back, and really what those expectations are. The other kind of a very tactical thing that really helped me in terms of building my confidence back up to go back to school is there are some like pre-work classes that are offered around statistics And I forget, there were, I think, 2 others, but Shannon and Christina will share that all with you. But those were like 1-day seminar things before classes started that I devoted my time to kind of get me back into the rhythm of learning, like back into the school, build back my confidence back up. I hadn't done statistics in like 13 years. So it's kind of a nice way to like ease in. And then I think there's also the aspect of you have to have those conversations continually about support and what you're working through, because things can be cyclical. Like right now, Torrie and I are heading into the very end of our program. We've got 5 weeks left. We've got our capstone projects are due soon. So like literally I'm sitting at this screen from about 8 a.m. to about 10 p.m. right now. Don't want to scare anyone, but that's just what the workload is like right now. And so my husband knows that, and he knows that he gets a slot on Saturday, and that's what we do. And then maybe the last piece I would share is we're here for the learning. And one thing that I have struggled with is letting go of the grades. So like I can learn and I can get very meaningful experiences from this. And maybe the grade is just, it's not always gonna be that A+, which is kind of like what I wanted. That's how I lived my life for so long in undergrad. So acknowledging where is the learning, where's your time best spent? Is it best spent maybe doing a little bit of networking or spending a little bit more time with your classmates versus always like having that A+ on every assignment and just finding that balance. So long answer, trying to wrap it up. Conversations ahead of time, ongoing, and balance.
Great tips. Jorge, is there anything that you would add?
I will add to the Lynn's comment, just prepare to be present. If you're gonna start online or in a hybrid model, be present during classes, be present during the meetings, be present during the assignment, because there's gonna be a time in the future, maybe 2 years from now, or when you graduate, that you're gonna miss every single interaction that you had in the program. So be present.
Thank you so much, Jorge. And thank you, Ndu, for the question. Well, we are a little over time. Apologies for that, but this was just such a good session. Torrie, Mark, Jorge, Lynn, it was so great seeing you. Thank you to everyone who joined. And, as I said, please reach out to us. May 1st is our final deadline, which might sound like, oh, it's just a few days away. But if you're really feeling like this fall is when you want to start, get in touch with us right away. We can work through the steps with you to help you prepare. And if it's next year, our application will actually open for the fall 2022 in August of this year, beginning of August. So please be in touch with us, and everyone stay safe and be well.